Words that heal the inner child. Say these every night, Carl Jung. What if your healing doesn't begin in therapy? Not in books, not even in conversation. What if it begins in the dark? In the final 30 seconds before you fall asleep. Carl Jung believed there is a sacred doorway between your waking identity and your unconscious self. A thin veil, a symbolic threshold, and when you cross it, your soul begins to listen, deeply, quietly, openly. In that moment, your ego dissolves. The mask you wore all day fades, and beneath it, the child you've forgotten starts to stir. You don't need perfect words. You need true ones, because the unconscious doesn't respond to performance. It responds to presence. And when you speak the right words at the right time, something ancient inside you begins to shift, to return, to soften. In this video, you'll discover 7 words that speak directly to the wounded child within you. Words drawn not from wishful thinking, but from the depths of Jungian psychology, where symbols heal and shadows come home. You don't need to fight yourself anymore. You don't need to beg for peace. You just need to speak with reverence and before you sleep. Let's begin. The sacred doorway of night. Carl Jung didn't believe that healing required noise. He believed it required presence, and presence is never louder than in silence. Every night, just before you fall asleep, something sacred happens. Not mystical, but deeply psychological. The masks begin to slip. The role you played today, the wounds you hid behind smiles, the noise you used to outrun your past, all of it begins to fade. And in that fading, the unconscious begins to rise. Jung called this moment a liminal space, a symbolic passage between the world you control and the world that truly shapes you. Between who you believe you are and what your inner child still believes about love, shame, safety, and self-worth. This is not the time for analysis. It's not the time for explanation. It's the time for invitation. Because the unconscious doesn't respond to force. It responds to symbol, to image, to emotion, and above all, to sincerity. The words you speak in those final seconds before sleep don't disappear. They descend deep into the roots of your psyche, where your inner myth lives, where your identity is quietly rewritten every single night. This is where healing begins. In this video, we're not just going to talk about self-love. We're going to speak it. We're going to plant it. And we're going to let the most ancient part of you, the part that still aches in silence, begin to come home. Not through effort, but through 7 simple words, spoken with truth and offered to the soul before sleep. Why the last words before sleep? Matter. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And nowhere is this truth more alive than in the final few seconds before sleep. Most people overlook this moment. They treat it like a dead end, a routine pause between exhaustion and rest. Scroll the phone, turn off the light, close the eyes. Done. But what if it's not an ending? What if it's a beginning? Jung believed that sleep is not a shutting down, but a crossing over, from the surface world of roles and identity into the deep sea of symbols, emotions, forgotten voices, and ancient patterns. He called this threshold the liminal space, a space where the ego relaxes and the unconscious awakens. And in this space, words, simple, sincere words, carry incredible power. Because at night, you're no longer your resume. You're not the friend, the parent, the performer. You are simply you. And your psyche, like a sleeping forest, opens its gates. In this softened state, your mind is highly suggestible, not in a manipulative way, but in a symbolic way. The stories you tell yourself at night become the soil for tomorrow's beliefs. And the words you whisper before sleep are like seeds planted into that soil. They grow, quietly, relentlessly. If your final thoughts are shaped by anxiety, "I'm a failure. I can't do this. I'm alone," your unconscious listens. Not with reason, but with absorption. It does not argue. It does not say, "That's not true." It simply receives. And then it starts building your internal world around those statements. They become the bricks of your inner myth. The story, you live without knowing you wrote it, but what happens when you speak different words? What happens when you say, I accept all of myself right now? What happens when you offer yourself truth instead of tension, compassion instead of control? Jung taught that words are symbols. They don't just describe reality, they shape. It especially at night, when the outer world grows quiet, words take on a deeper tone. They bypass the armor of performance and move directly into the unconscious. And the unconscious does not care about appearances, it cares about essence. To Jung, healing didn't begin with analyzing the past, it began with facing the symbolic, the image, the emotion, the forgotten part of the soul. And symbols, like words spoken with intention, can awaken archetypes. These aren't fictional characters. They are living patterns in the psyche, the inner child, the shadow, the healer, the warrior, the one who loves without fear. Each of them lives in you. Dormant, waiting, listening, and the right words can wake them. Saying, I forgive myself may stir the wounded healer. Saying, I am enough may call home the inner child. Saying, I trust myself may summon the voice you've buried for years. These are not affirmations. They are rituals. And rituals are how the unconscious reorganizes itself. Not through willpower, but through reverence. Today, most people go to bed with tension in their jaw, a phone in their hand, and criticism in their thoughts. But Jung would invite us to do something else. He would ask us to treat bedtime not as the end of a day, but as the beginning of inner transformation. Because during sleep, the psyche doesn't rest. It works, it processes emotion, it digests forgotten memories, it generates dreams, which Jung called spontaneous portraits of the unconscious. These are not random. They're messages, encoded in image, speaking in symbol, calling us home. And what you say to yourself before you fall asleep acts like an invitation, a gentle instruction, that shapes the kind of work your unconscious will do. If you speak with guilt, the unconscious digs into shame. If you speak with peace, the unconscious softens. If you speak words that reflect the totality of your being, even the broken, unfinished, unwanted parts, you begin the process Jung called individuation, the return to wholeness. Not by fixing anything, but by including everything. This is the gift of those final moments. They are not passive, they are transformative. And the words you choose, they are not small, they are sacred. They are the first bricks in a new architecture of the soul, one that no longer runs from the shadow but welcomes it, one that no longer begs for worth but remembers it. That's why the 7 words you will learn in this video are not motivational cliches. They are keys. Keys to doors you forgot were locked, and every time you speak them, especially before sleep, you turn that key. Just a little, enough for light to start coming through, enough for the child within. You to hear maybe for the first time. You are not broken, you are not forgotten, you are home. The 7 words that heal the inner child. Carl Jung never gave us a list of 7 perfect words. He didn't believe in formulas. He believed in symbols. He believed in rituals that speak to the unconscious, not to manipulate it, but to honor it. And if we study Jung's work, his teachings on the shadow, individuation, archetypes, and integration, we begin to see something emerge, a language, a symbolic pattern. A quiet formula not for perfection but for wholeness. From that language we distill 7 words, 7 words that, when spoken with sincerity before sleep, can begin to shift the foundation of your inner world. They are simple, but they are not small. They are, I accept all of myself right now. Let's look at them, one by one, through the lens of Jungian depth psychology. This isn't just a pronoun. In Jungian terms, I is the beginning of ownership. It signals to the psyche. This is about me, not about your parents, not your partner, not the world. Just you. By saying I, you begin the return to self. The shift away from projection and blame toward conscious responsibility. It is the first step of individuation, becoming a person who is no longer defined by their roles, wounds, or the expectations of others. It says, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm ready. 2. Accept. Jung taught that healing begins not when we fight the darkness, but when we face it. To accept does not mean to approve of everything you've done. It doesn't mean you like your pain. It doesn't mean you agree with every choice. It means I stop pretending it's not there. It means I no longer run from the parts of me I was taught to hide. Acceptance is the beginning of integration, the process of bringing light to the shadow, not to erase it, but to reclaim it. To say, I accept, is to tell the unconscious, you don't have to scream anymore, I hear you now. Afraid, or this word is often the hardest. Because most of us want to heal selectively. We want to love the confident part, the creative part, the part that tries hard. But Jung said the shadow is everything you haven't yet accepted about yourself. The jealous part, the broken part, the one that still aches, the one that still rages, all means no more editing, no more hiding, no more waiting until you're ready to love yourself. To say all is an act of emotional courage. It is a psychic signal that you are done choosing which parts of yourself are worthy. You are choosing to be whole, not polished. Of a small word. But it implies ownership. It says, everything inside me belongs to me, not as a burden, but as a birthright. You are no longer disowning your pain. You are no longer exiling your voice. You are saying, this is mine, and because it's mine, I can work with it. Jung taught that the more you own what is within you, the less you are controlled by it. Projection fades, blame dissolves, empowerment begins. Myself. This word is the center of the ritual. It names the target of the invitation, your full self, not your persona, not the mask, not the role, but the self. The sacred totality that holds all opposites, light and dark, joy and grief, masculine and feminine, shadow and soul. To say myself is to acknowledge the inner healer Jung believed lives inside every human being. You're not asking the world to fix you. You're remembering that you are the one you've been waiting for. Right. This word brings in time, and Jung was clear. The unconscious lives outside of time, but the ego does not. The ego lives in past and future, guilt, fear, delay. But healing can only happen in one place, now. To say right is to collapse the story. That says, I'll love myself when I'll be worthy after. Right removes the negotiation. It says, now is enough to us. Now this word is the anchor. It roots the entire statement into the present moment, the exact threshold between ego and unconscious, between thought and dream, between fear and surrender. Jung believed that transformation happens when symbol meets sincerity in the right moment. Now is the moment. When you say this word, you finalize the ritual. You let go of waiting. You let go of resistance. You let go of the illusion that healing is something far away. You bring it home. When spoken together, I accept all of myself right now. It's more than a sentence. It's a symbolic act. A bridge between worlds. A ritual that calls your unconscious forward. Not to be fixed, but to be seen. Each time you speak it before sleep, you are not performing. You are returning. To the self, to the child, to the shadow, to the soul. This is not performance psychology, this is psychic healing. You are not begging for change, you are inviting wholeness, and your unconscious, quiet, ancient, powerful, hears you and begins to respond. Shadow integration begins in the night. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious is not a passive storage unit. It is alive. It moves. It remembers. It dreams. And at night, when the conscious mind finally releases control, the unconscious begins. It's sacred work. You may think you're resting, but deep beneath your awareness, a kind of alchemy is taking place. This is why Jung placed such importance on the shadow. Not because it was something to be feared, but because it held the exact medicine we've been trained to avoid. The shadow isn't the enemy. It's the exiled self, the parts of you that were once unacceptable, unlovable, or simply too much. The grief you buried, the rage you suppressed, the tenderness you masked, the dreams you deemed unrealistic. All of it lives there, not gone, but waiting. And at night, when the persona falls silent, the door opens. You don't need a therapist. In that moment, you don't need a detailed plan, you need a ritual, a symbolic gesture that tells the unconscious, I'm here now, I'm listening. That's what the 7 words do. They don't command the psyche, they invite it. I accept all of myself right now. This is not motivational fluff. It is a sacred phrase that alters the inner dynamic, because the shadow doesn't return through force. It returns through recognition. When you speak those words at the edge of sleep, you are extending a hand to the parts of you that have lived in hiding. You are saying to come home, I will not punish you anymore. And what happens next is quiet, but profound. Sometimes it begins with a dream, a hallway you've never walked down, a child looking back at you, an animal guiding you through. The dark, a storm giving way to silence. These are not hallucinations. They are messages. Jung saw dreams as the voice of the unconscious, a spontaneous self-portrait of the inner world, expressed through symbols instead of logic. If you go to bed with resistance, your dreams may be chaotic, violent, confusing. But when you go to bed with acceptance, the unconscious starts to shift. The war ends. The lost voices begin to speak again. The child who once cried for safety begins to trust. This is shadow integration, and it begins not with confrontation, but with invitation. You may not feel it at first. You may not remember your dreams. You may still wake up tired, guarded, unsure. But something is happening, because each night that you speak those words, you are planting a new instruction, a quiet one that doesn't demand healing but allows it. Over time, the shadow begins to soften. It doesn't need to scream anymore. It starts to whisper. That inner critic, it loses volume, because the part of you it was protecting now feels safe enough to breathe. That emotional trigger, it doesn't explode, because you're no longer avoiding what it was pointing to. That dream you keep having, of being chased, of falling, of hiding, it starts to change. The figure chasing you pauses. The fall slows down. The hiding place becomes a room with a door. These are not small things. They are psychic breakthroughs. Not loud, but real. Jung warned against trying to purify the shadow. The goal is not to eliminate it. The goal is to integrate it, because inside the shadow is not just pain, but also power. The strength you disowned, the fire you suppressed, the boundaries you never claimed, the creativity you silenced, the intuition you mocked. All of it is still there, waiting for your permission to return. And permission comes through presence, through truth, through ritual. This is why the 7-word practice works best at night, because during the day the ego is on guard. It performs, it protects, it resists. But at night, when your body softens and your thoughts begin to slow, you enter that sacred liminal space where the unconscious is open, vulnerable, ready. It's like a garden that only blooms in moonlight. And your words, they are the water. Even if you don't see the sprouts right away, they are growing. Each repetition is a quiet declaration. There is no part of me that is unworthy of return. Some nights you'll feel nothing. Other nights you may feel waves of grief, of anger, of sudden clarity. Don't judge them. Don't chase them. Just stay with the words. Because integration doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens in layers. Like sediment settling after a storm, it happens in dreams you don't remember, in moments of calm where panic once lived, in how you begin to speak to yourself when no one else is around. And slowly, the fractured parts of you become a whole again, not perfect, but present, not fearless, but free. This is the essence of Jung's work, that the shadow is not a flaw, it is a forgotten doorway. And every night before sleep you have a chance to open it, not to run through, but to stand at its edge and say, I am no longer afraid of what lives here, and the psyche hears you, and responds. Rewriting the inner story and living from wholeness, Carl Jung believed that most people don't live their lives. They live their unconscious stories, unread scripts written in childhood, shaped by wounds, fears, projections, and silences. And, unless we make those stories conscious, they guide every decision, every relationship, every dream. While we still think we're choosing freely, this isn't fate, it's programming, not destiny. Just the echo of a voice you forgot was still speaking. But here is the sacred truth. That story can be rewritten, not with denial, not with performance, but with symbolic presence, with rituals that gently invite the unconscious to shift its foundations. Every night you speak the 7 words, you are not just calming yourself. You are interrupting the old myth. You are saying, I am no longer the child who must earn love by disappearing. I am no longer the protector of other people's pain. I am no longer the echo of a story that never belonged to me. You are writing a new story, not with pressure but with permission, and your unconscious, long accustomed to abandonment, begins to trust you again, not because you're perfect, but because you're finally present. Jung taught that the unconscious speaks through symbols, not sentences, and when you repeat a symbolic phrase like, I accept all of myself right now, you're not just saying something nice, you're offering a new framework. Over time, the internal language begins to change. Instead of, I always ruin everything, you hear, maybe this part of me just needs compassion. Instead of, no one ever stays, you hear, I'm not abandoning myself anymore. Instead of, I have to fix everything, you hear, it's safe to rest. These shifts are subtle, but they are revolutionary, because the voice that once attacked you was never yours. It was inherited. And healing doesn't mean silencing it with force. It means replacing it with truth. As this inner language evolves, so do your behaviors. You begin to pause before reacting. You question your own self-judgment. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop explaining your needs like they're inconveniences, and the world around you responds. Because as you reorganize your inner world, you stop attracting the outer. Reflections of your wound. You're no longer magnetized to emotional scarcity because you've stopped starving yourself internally. You're no longer acting out the role of the lost child because you've finally come home to your inner adult. Jung called this process individuation. The journey toward becoming who you were always meant to be, not a version others approved of, but your truest self, whole, rooted, free. Individuation. That is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you to shrink, and this remembering happens in quiet moments. It happens in the way you sit with yourself, in how you speak to the frightened parts, in how you allow anger to surface without shame, in how you let joy expand without guilt. That's the return to wholeness, and it begins every night with 7 words. There is no need to force healing. No need to understand everything before you begin. No need to wait until you're ready. The unconscious doesn't respond to readiness. It responds to truth. It responds to ritual. It responds to consistency. Each time you whisper those words, you're giving your soul a signal. You're no longer abandoned. And something deep inside you, as something ancient, something holy, starts to rise. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, breathe differently, because your story is no longer being written by your pain. It's being written by your presence. This is the final step, not dramatic, not loud, but sacred. You are becoming the parent you always needed. You are becoming the voice that says, you are enough. And that voice, spoken each night, slowly becomes your truth. Not because it was forced, but because it was welcomed. You're no longer chasing healing. You're living it. Sleep is where the soul returns. Home, there is a moment just before your eyes close, where the outside world fades and the inner world begins to glow. This is not just sleep. This is a return to the places you forgot, to the child you silenced, to the parts of you that only speak in dreams. And in that moment, the words you choose to speak become more than thoughts. They become companions. They walk with you into the night. They tell the unconscious, it's safe now, you're not alone, you are not broken. You are becoming. And every night is another step, not toward perfection, but toward wholeness, not away from the pain, but into the truth that you no longer have to carry it alone. You are not healing to impress anyone. You are healing to finally meet yourself. Not the version you created to survive, but the soul that's been whispering all along. I'm still here. Let these 7 words guide you. Let them soften the sharp edges. Let them rewire the echoes. And if along the way you wish to deepen this journey, to understand your shadow, your patterns, your forgotten inner child, you'll find a quiet invitation waiting in the pinned comment below. A resource crafted to guide you with love and depth. But above all else, remember this. You are worthy of your own gentleness every single night, especially when no one is watching. If this journey spoke to something inside you, you're already doing the work. And if you wish to walk it with us, this space is yours. Welcome home and good night.